In tonight's Top Gear, Tony Mason saves some rhinos. New chips for old, how your car can go faster with the appliance of science. And you tell us about the cars you love or hate in our exclusive Top Gear survey.
Nobody really knows what the great British motoring public actually thinks about their cars because nobody's bothered to ask. Well, we're asking. For the second year running, we've published our J.D. Power Top Gear Car Satisfaction Index, the survey they didn't want us to carry out, the survey that causes car makers sleepless nights. Why? Because it tells the whole, the real, the unvarnished truth about what you think about your cars, warts and all. Like these three owners who between them drive a Land Rover Discovery, a Skoda Favorit and a Ford Escort. Have a look at this and try and guess who's talking about what.
In the 2 years I've owned my vehicle, it's been off the road for about a week with a new gearbox, it's rusted, electrical and brake problems.
I find my car one of the most satisfying I've ever owned. Certainly the most enormous fun.
I've had my car for about 18 months and it's been a complete disaster from start to finish.
So which car was which? Well, the one that needed a new gearbox was the Land Rover Discovery. The one that was a complete disaster was the Ford Escort. And the bloke who said his car was one of the most satisfying he'd ever owned was talking about a Skoda Favorit. Surprised? Well, you should be, because Britain's car owners have some very revealing opinions. They say that the best sellers are far from the best, and the cars we're supposed to hate, we actually like. So how do we know all this? We called in the experts, J.D. Power, who have been carrying out car satisfaction surveys in the States for over a decade. They're feared and admired as an accurate barometer of what Americans think of their cars. We asked K-Reg drivers to fill out questionnaires, and nearly 40,000 of you jammed our phone lines. With the completed questionnaires, we had a representative sample for 70 of Britain's top-selling K-Reg cars. Power then ranked them in order of satisfaction. From the performance and problems to the servicing, the dealer and the warranty, we asked you about the whole ownership experience. And don't forget, these aren't our opinions, they're yours. You supplied the information, all we've done is put it in order. So let's start with the cars that impressed you most. In 10th place comes Mazda's 626. You liked its performance, reliability and painless ownership. You'd have been even happier if the dealers and warranty had been better. The Carina came 9th, liked for its reliability, long warranty and dealer service. You said you'd like it even more if they refined its performance. You put the MR2 in 8th place because of its impressive reliability and the way it went, not to mention all those charming Toyota dealers. In at number 7 is Honda's Concerto. You gave Honda's customer care and servicing a big vote of confidence, but you thought its performance and warranty could be better. And another Honda in 6th place, the Accord. You liked the dealers, but said that its performance, acceleration and handling could be improved. And you think very highly of Protons. They exceeded the industry average on performance, and you liked the smoothness of their engines. 38% said you'd buy another. In at number 4 is Mazda's 323. You liked the fact that it had very few problems, and any it did have was sorted with only one visit to the dealer. New at number 3 is Mitsubishi's little Colt. You liked its smooth performance, and according to you, Mitsubishi dealers were wonderful. And runner-up this year is another Honda, the multi-talented Civic. Apart from not liking the high servicing costs, you approved of the dealers, the backup, and the way it drove. And this year's number 1 is the Corolla. You liked everything about it, and a massive 48% of you said you'd buy another. Now, you don't have to be Wittgenstein to work out that the entire top 10 is dominated by Japanese cars. So exactly what is it about all these Oriental motors that you like so much? Well, according to you, you like their reliability and the way the dealer treats you. Now, in the past, we have called the Corolla boring. But you say there's nothing more boring than sitting in a garage reception area waiting hours to have your broken car fixed. And there, I think, you have a point.
I knew that the car's going to be reliable, which it duly has been. I've also found that it's a very smooth car to drive, very easy and efficient. It's very easy for me to park, good view and an extremely good sized boot to put not only the pram but all the shopping as well inside.
So are those Toyota dealers as good as everybody says?
Yes, they look after your car, they tell you if you've had any problems, and they valet and clean it for you without having to ask. They're absolutely marvellous.
So what of the European manufacturers, the Rovers, the Saabs, the Mercedes? How did they fare? Well, let's have a look at the rest of the top 20. A shock to many will be Skoda's humble favourite, coming in at a lofty 13. And it's not due to people's low expectations. An owner from our survey used to be a Mercedes dealer.
It's a good car, it's reliable, it's fun to drive, as many classic cars were. It's a very sensible price, it's economical. What more can I say? It's a great car.
So do you think all those Skoda jokes are unfair?
Yes, but my son won't stop cracking them.
But what if you're not one of the fortunate few that owns a Skoda? Where's your car come? Well, have a look at this lot. They all came above the industry average. The boys at Jaguar should give themselves a hearty slap on the back for their very respectable 22nd place with the XJ6. Build quality has come on in leaps and bounds since the dark days of the early 80s, and the Jaguar's high score was due mainly to its gilt-edged 3-year warranty and the fact that Jaguar dealers tend to treat their customers like members of an exclusive club. The XJ6's score would have been even higher had it not been for the rather steep servicing costs. But apart from that, the news is uniformly good.
It's quite a pleasant experience actually taking the car in to be serviced. It's not a conveyor belt job. Just walking through reception, the receptionist smiles at you, people see to you straight away. I think it's a tradition with Jaguar. When you pick up a Jaguar, you get a bunch of flowers on the back seat. They're just nice little touches, really.
Jaguar may have come in well above the industry average, but there are plenty of manufacturers who came well below. Here's a list of those who need to polish up their product. So Land Rover are one manufacturer that needs to try a bit harder. They've come well below the industry average. You say that these rugged off-roaders aren't quite as rugged as they're cracked up to be.
The gearbox required rebuilding, and another serious problem was the brakes. Apart from that, there were just small niggly details such as corrosion on the doors and on the roof bars. Had the light switch go, was left with no lights, and I had a dealer recall for the window switches.
But the big question is, would you buy another?
Yes, I would. They are different, they're good to drive, but they are let down by these niggly little faults, which seem to be a problem with quality more than anything else. And they're fun to drive off-road.
And now for the real duffers. What you said was 16 of Britain's most disappointing cars. And if you've got a Ford or Vauxhall, you might want to listen very carefully indeed. The Astra's a bit better this year, but not by much. It's up 5 places. Fiat's Tipo was let down by lots of annoying problems. And the Corsa, because of its harsh engine and clunky gearbox. Owning a Rover 800 was also problematic. And as for Fiat's Uno, it rated badly because of performance and patchy dealer servicing work. The Calibra's servicing costs were low, but you didn't think the dealers did their job properly. And it's the same story with the Carlton. XMs had plenty of problems, and you say the dealers can't handle them. Reasonable for a Ford, but poor by any other standards, the Granada comes in at 64th. The Sierra was pulled down by its poor and expensive servicing, but it just managed to pip the Lada Samara to the post. The Mini seems to be showing its age at 67th place. And you didn't like the Orion or its performance, handling and unreliability. Up one from last year, the Frontera still had lots of problems and you weren't impressed by the way they were sorted.
So which car came bottom of our survey? Which is your least satisfying motor? Well, get ready for a sharp intake of breath, because it's also one of the UK's best sellers, the Ford Escort. You say the car you buy the most, you like the least.
It's done under 25,000 miles, and in that time I've had to have clutch, tyres, I've had electrical problems, electric windows stuck down, lost my lights, lost interior lights, and basically it is the worst car I've ever had.
What about your experience of Ford dealers?
The Ford dealers were no better at all. As soon as I was out of warranty, they didn't want to know unless I come up with the money. I've got friends who have had the same car on the same year and they've both sold them. They think they're absolute rubbish.
But Ford knew those early Escorts were less than sparkling, and to their credit have been refining them ever since, culminating in the latest Escort introduced a few months ago, which is a much, much better car. And it's only by listening to what you, the end user, the consumer, really think about their products that manufacturers like Ford can hope to build better cars. We on Top Gear are determined to give your views a voice, to keep banging away at this so you get reliable cars, value for money, and the sort of service you deserve. All we're asking for is a fair exchange. You pay good money, you want good cars and good service. It's not a lot to ask.
The Mark II Escort comes from a time before faxes and cellular phones. It's a simple, uncomplicated car, as earthy as the ploughed field into which its basic suspension would often hurl you.
Because it was so simple, even a simpleton could make it go faster. All you had to do was rip out the weedy little carburettor that Ford had fitted and replace it with a couple like that. Barrel-chested, hirsute. All of a sudden your mouse-like Escort would become like a snarly leopard with big spiky teeth. The trouble is, of course, that today's cars don't have carburetors. They all have fuel injection. But don't for 1 minute think that the game is over.
These two Escorts look about the same, so why is this one so much faster? Well, like all cars today, the Cosy has an onboard computer which tells the engine what to do thousands of times a second. And in this one, quite simply, it's been reprogrammed. So it now gives the engine different orders.
And how exactly do you reprogram a computer when you can't even set a video recorder? Well, it's simple. You get your 11-year-old son to take its chip out and put a new one in. One just like this, which you can buy for about 200 quid.
By just changing the chip alone, 275 horsepower on a, say, Escort Cosworth. After that, you've got to start changing head gaskets, remapping things. It can start to get serious. It invalidates the warranty straight away. Not to mention the fuel economy on the car and so on and so forth. It can get pretty expensive.
Insurance?
Definitely, the insurance is going to go up. You've got to notify your insurers.
So what's the upside then?
The upside, a lot of fun. Done properly, chip cars are seriously good fun. They go a lot quicker, and basically, the whole reason of buying a turbo car is you can modify them very easily.
But it doesn't have to be a turbo car. If it has fuel injection, you can tailor it to suit your own requirements. In a normal Calibra, when you lift your foot off the throttle, the computer shuts off all the fuel to the engine. But in this one, it's been reprogrammed so the fuel keeps on coming. Not environmentally friendly, not good news at the pumps, but it makes it more responsive, nicer to drive. The chip in question costs around £225 to buy and fit, and means you have to use super unleaded fuel, but it is sensible. If you go mad, you could end up doing the best 0 to 60 time ever, once, and then the bang will be heard across 4 continents.
No, chips are fine, but if you get too greedy with the horsepower, you'll end up pushing your car home in a wheelbarrow.
This is the end of the road for most cars, an ignominious fate in the jaws of the crusher or cannibalised for parts. But over the years, some cars avoid this fate, and with care and love, they become sought-after classics. And the mecca for classic cars and enthusiasts has become the Top Gear Classic and Sports Car Show held at Birmingham's National Exhibition Centre this year between May the 6th and the 8th. So how would you like to join us there? You would? Well, all you have to do is recognise this great British sports car from these cunningly disguised shots. So, do you know what it is? If you do, phone this number, 0891 114488. If you're a lucky winner, we'll give you a pair of tickets to the show, plus luxury hotel accommodation. And that number will be repeated at the end of the programme. Good luck.
Crushing around the Kenyan bush for fun may look like hooliganism, but this off-road event has a serious purpose, raising money to support a charity devoted to saving the rhinoceros. Appropriately, it's called Rhino Charge.
Well, this is what it's all about. It may be the attraction of rhino horn in overseas markets that's caused the near extinction of these animals, but it's the Kenyans who've been killing them. Now, Kenyans are doing everything they can to save them.
Rhino Ark is a private venture devoted to erecting a fence between the rhino's home in the Aberdare Mountains and the farming land next to it. The fence helps keep the poachers out, but mainly it stops the rhinos destroying the farmers' crops and hopefully allows man and wildlife to coexist peacefully. Money is the key. Each of the 50 participants starts registration by handing over the cash and cheques they've raised in sponsorship to Ken Cool, the founder of Rhino Ark and organiser of this, the 6th Rhino Charge. It took place just outside the Masai Mara Game Reserve. 10 controls had to be visited, covering the least possible distance. Unfortunately, the theoretical minimum distance was made more difficult to achieve by a few minor obstacles like high hills and steep valleys. Detours would mean more miles, but speed was not that important, as long as the whole thing was completed within the 10-hour time limit. From the crowd at scrutineering, it was obvious you didn't need the latest in high-tech off-roaders to take part. This 1928 Ford Model A had been retired 10 years ago and was mildly objecting to the rigours ahead.
There's a noise coming from the timing gear, which we don't like the sound of. And we think that Mr. Henry Ford put an inspection cover there especially so that you could maybe adjust the time. So that's what we're trying to do right now.
The location of the Rhino Charge was about 30 miles from scrutineering and kept a closely guarded secret to prevent wrecking. Maps weren't available until later that afternoon, by which time the weather had changed.
This isn't meant to be the rainy season in Kenya, but you could have fooled me. This is the driver's briefing. We should have all been sitting outside in the sun, but everybody's huddled in this tent because it's been raining torrentially for 3 hours. But this is the Rhino Charge, a big challenge, so the show must go on.
And that meant grabbing the instructions as soon as possible and spending the rest of the evening working out a route as close as possible to the theoretical minimum, but capable of being covered in a vehicle. Beyond that, the regulations imposed few constraints.
We mustn't chop down trees, and that's about it.
At 6 o'clock the following morning, in the stunning African dawn, the convoys of 5 teams made their way to the 10 different starting points. I asked Ian McRae how he'd contrived to win the last 2 events in his old 2-wheel drive Ford Taunus.
I've got the best team. I've got the best navigators. I don't do much myself. I only just drive like a passenger. No, we've got the best. We've got the best team.
The quagmire around the headquarters tent wasn't typical of the terrain as a whole. Reaching the most northerly control meant climbing hundreds of feet out of the valley to a rocky hilltop. No easy task for a 40-year-old Land Rover or its 78-year-old driver, Staxafir, and his wife on their first Rhino charge.
That was on a scrap heap, this car. And we redid it, and off we go. That's all we do.
34 years of driving, so for once to drive for something. For big fun.
What sort of preparation have you done to the vehicle?
No changes apart putting in the winch. That's all we did. And we tried to clean it.
No, I'm all right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, charge!
Well, roll gently off down the slope would be more accurate. Certainly, for Staxafir's team, the old Land Rover was being treated with care. The former big game hunter and his wildlife photographer wife had seen enough of this country to know the value of more haste, less speed. Besides, this was an event where route finding was crucial, and most of the team spent the day running ahead of the vehicle, prospecting for the shortest feasible route. Peter Street's team had elected for the direct route up the slope to this control on top of another rocky outcrop.
Any of you guys want to help?
When you get stuck, it's out with the winch cable, hook it round the nearest solid tree and pull yourself up. Meanwhile, 5 miles away, Mohoho Kenyatta's Unimog was facing different problems. The muddy gully was to provide entertainment all day.
Slip sliding away, slip sliding away. You know the near your destination, holy slip sliding away, slip sliding away, slip sliding away. You know the near your destination, holy slip sliding away.
For the son of the former president, it was out of the frying pan and into the fire. His Unimog threatened to tumble 20 feet into a stream. He was saved by some impressive manpower provided by all the other teams unable to get through.
What happened there then?
Basically, we were just going down and it slipped onto the sign and basically rolled down the cliff. But we managed to get it under control, basically.
You know that there's a bit of a drop into a river down below there.
I realized that. I think my heart was coming out of my mouth.
For the lone British crew, taking the easy way up to the most southerly hilltop control, progress may have been less dramatic. But they were buoyed up by knowing they'd raised more money than any other crew, £13,500.
Well, we've had to stop for 2 hours to completely rebuild the rear suspension. But other than that, we're now on our way again. We've lost 2 hours. We're doing well up till then, but we just have to see how we get on now.
What do you think of it?
Absolutely mad. Start raving mad, but it's such good fun. It's brilliant. I haven't had so much fun for years.
Oh, so you're not sorry you came?
Oh, God, no. I'll come again next year. We've already talked about it.
While the British team limped away down the gentle southern slope, there were others tackling the steep northern face. Halfway up, we met Neil McRae. The team, run by Ian McRae's son, featured a pair of massive rugby forwards to manhandle their small Toyota up the slopes. But on this hill, it was just a question of dodging the bigger trees. The combination worked, as they were to end up winners overall, covering just half a mile less than the second-placed crew.
What's the problem here?
Well, this hill is so steep down, and we guys have busted brake hose here. So we're trying to go down. We're using a winch out there.
So you've virtually no brakes at all then?
Well, we have brakes, but they're weak, slightly weak.
The technique was to let it roll down the hill in reverse gear, then drop in the clutch to stop it running away. Mind you, the vegetation helped. It's the sort of thing that causes controversy in Britain. The damage didn't seem to concern Kenya's wildlife chief.
Well, the off-road driving has comparatively little impact on vegetation. It recovers very quickly. And in many of the national parks, we have 10 or 15 times the sort of damage done by tourist vehicles that you're looking at in Rhino Charge. Frankly, I'm not worried. It's very localized and it's for a very short period of time.
It all looks pretty straightforward on the map, or even from the air. But down here, it's unbelievable. You haven't got a clue what's behind the next bush. And it's not only the vehicles that get lost. This morning, we actually came across a crew member who got out of his car to find the way and then couldn't find the car again.
Going for his third successive win, Ian McRae was prepared to take chances. But this time, his luck ran out.
We went over the escarpment, and this particular escarpment turned into quite an epic. And I couldn't stop. And everybody was out the way, and I was yelling, and we hit a big tree. Then we stopped. And that's what tore all the front end to pieces.
As the 5:30 deadline approached, the checkpoints were suddenly overrun with cars desperate to finish on time. Despite the overshoot, Lou Wed made it by just 20 seconds. The Model A Ford was still running, but hadn't made all 10 controls.
This is our number 6, because we spent about 3 hours taking the engine apart to refix one of the bearings. That's one of those things. And as you can see, we did our fair share of it.
Just turn around, look at that.
With that sort of infectious enthusiasm, this year's event was oversubscribed in no time. But if you want to have a go, you'll be pleased to know that there are plans afoot for a similar event to be held in Britain, all to help save the Rhino.